The one thing that I consider to be fundamental to creative pursuits, and especially songwriting, is you really have to listen to yourself. It's just that's the only rule. All the other rules can be broken. But if you start trying to write songs based on what you think exteriorly people want and what, you're never going to write anything of substance.
That's Ian Moore. I'm Jamie Green, and this is Trading Fours. Hey everybody. Hey, how do you define fandom? For me, it's a rich appreciation for the honesty and beauty that comes from art, usually in the form of music for me. 31 years ago, I was an aspiring guitarist going to school at the University of Nebraska when I walked by the Zoo Bar in downtown Lincoln one afternoon to see a poster for this new Texas guitar slinger, Ian Moore. I was intrigued and went that very night, and quite frankly, he blew me away. His guitar playing, his singing, and his showmanship, it was all great. We talked for a bit after the gig, and he was funny and gracious. I actually took him and his bandmates out to lunch the next day as a little bit of appreciation. I actually brought that up with him years later, but of course he had no recollection of this. How could he? He's been on the road for over 3 decades now, crisscrossing America more times than he could count. It's funny how music becomes the soundtrack of your life. His albums and evolution as a songwriter and performer match, in my mind, my life events. His first album is about my time in Austin. His second album is when I met my wife, Kelly. She quickly became a big fan too, so subsequent albums remind us of dating, marriage, moving to Phoenix, moving back to Kansas City, having kids, dealing with serious illness, and more. Through it all, Ian has delivered great music and wonderful live performances. We're almost the exact same age, and as the decades pass, as we both age and both of us have our own 2 sons and raise our children, it's been a pleasure just to be a fellow traveler on this earth. I reached Ian at his home studio on Vashon Island, just outside of Seattle. It was great to get caught up. It's always so much fun to talk to him. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Ian Moore. Thanks for the soundtrack, my friend. Let's get started. I really appreciate this, and it's so much fun to talk to you. And obviously, it's such a strange thing where, you're the guy that's on the stage, and then I'm just the fan, but I hope I'm not the creepy fan, but always somebody who's appreciated you from, the first time I saw you in Lincoln in 1989 at the Zoo Bar.
I want to actually, before you get any further, I want to clarify that is the least creepy thing in the world. For people like me, for what I do, having people that care enough to follow your career through their whole life
Yep.
is the best possible thing for me. And you are like I was telling, I just had a meeting with my nonprofit. I'm the president of the nonprofit, so I've got a executive director and then an administrative assistant, and I'm talking to them, and I was explaining kind of like what I'm trying to do for this time, like how am I going to survive and what am I going to do? And I said, it's interesting. I said, I feel like the good thing, because there's a lot of things that are scary to me right now and kind of like a lot of unknowns, and not being able to play is really freaking me out. But being able to, like, when I did that first live stream, I was kind of going, I had no idea. I was like, fuck, I don't know, 20 people. I could make $50. I don't know. I had no idea.
Right.
And just the generosity, and I think the way that thing to me means that I won, that everything that I wanted in music, all the things that I've wanted my whole life are pretty much here. I mean, there's a couple, I wish I had a little bit more power in the music industry to get it out further, because that's a little frustrating to me. But really the big picture stuff, being able to make music the way I want to make it, having a group of people that trust me and care about me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane in the entertainment industry. You're pretty much like, once you're not trendy and your moment's over, that's it.
Yeah.
See you later, and we'll see you on the comeback tour, right?
Yeah, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. You're lucky, exactly.
Well, I think a lot of, obviously, since we're the same age when, it's before the internet when all this started. So I walk by the zoo bar and there's a sign saying that you're from Austin, Texas. Well, Austin, Texas from Lincoln, Nebraska, that's like another world. It's not like it is now or everything. So it's like, well,
Yeah.
there's so many great guitar players out of Texas. I got to go check this dude out.
Yeah. I was really fortunate to come out of Austin in that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many great guitar, and obviously it was cool and loved it, and all the years. And I think probably one of the reasons why we followed your career so much is, Ian, I've always appreciated the honesty, that you're so honest with what you do, and watching you develop your craft over the years, and always being true to yourself and all your stuff. It's been a great joy to watch your progression and stuff, and your songwriting, and it's a great honor as a fan to listen to it and what you do and what you bring to it. So that's kind of where we come from.
Yeah.
So how are you holding up, man? It's a weird time.
Well, I'm holding up a lot of, I mean, all in all, I'm holding up pretty good. I mean, I'm like there's like I can feel the fragility inside of me probably that most people are feeling right now. And I don't think it's an accident that a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, and which I feel I think it needs to happen. Some of the racial stuff that and trying to confront systemic racism. But I don't think it would necessarily happen right now were it not right now. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
people are really, one of the things that I think that gets lost. I mean, if you watch the news, you got obviously the doctors talking about the danger. It's the first thing we hear. And then you got the other kind of this other group of people going, well, what about the economic thing? And those are both gigantic drivers. The first thing I thought about before this all hit, when I was still playing shows and I was going, am I going to have to cancel these shows? Was about the emotional and spiritual well-being of our society as a whole. And now that we're into this, I'm concerned about musicians, because I think a lot of musicians, we have learned our therapy is music, as is many of the people that listen to it. And so with this kind of this ecosystem that's created, I'm worried about that. And then I'm worried about our collective mental health, and like just like like when you study cultures, and what was the culture like after the Depression? Well, they were very worried about losing everything for the rest of their life. What about those first generation
Mm-hmm.
immigrants? And I've got a 17-year-old who's 6'8", and he's a kind of emerging basketball star. This year's his senior year. What happens if they don't play basketball?
Right.
His whole life shifts. And all those kids across the country that are 17, 18,
Yep.
man, the ramifications. So as far as my individual, like I said, I'm really fortunate. Right before this podcast, I did a lesson. I practiced this morning. I was just out working on, I've restored a boat, so I'm putting in a new gas tank. So we're about to put in some flagstones. I've got bees. I got stuff that I'm doing that gives me a good place to put my energy. We live in the woods. We can go for walks.
Right.
But every single morning when I wake up, I can feel the weight, and I just feel worried for I don't know. I just keep thinking like these individual stories where I imagine people, and I worry about the collective we.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. And it's interesting because I have two boys as well. And, he was a senior, and he was going to go to Europe on his choir spring
Ah,
trip, and that got canceled. And then he was finally going to go to prom, and that got canceled. And, you bleed for your kids a lot more than you do for yourself. Right. I mean,
of
I think
course.
that's true. But,
Yeah,
I've taken a lot of solace in reading history. I've always been a big history person.
yeah,
So
me
I've been,
too.
cracking open the George Washington book at Valley Forge, or,
Oh, cool.
any of those things about, you said the Depression. And, my mom is still alive, thankfully. She's 88 tomorrow,
Huh?
native Texan.
Right on.
And it's been great because she was, she's like, we had polio, and, my uncle had tuberculosis, and it
Yeah,
wasn't fun, but we got through it, and we'll
got
get
through
through
it.
this too. I mean, it was
Yeah,
really, she's been a great anchor for that kind of stuff, where,
yeah,
she doesn't freak out. She's careful. She didn't leave the house, but she's like, it'll be okay. And I think that's important. So,
yeah. I feel like it's going to be okay. I just think we're going to be different. I just hope the differences are mostly positive. I do believe in the what is that great quote about the overarching the arc of history, that history
right.
is arc, even though you go through dark periods. If you study history, there's often a movement towards a more conscious way of living, and I really do believe in that. And I think that pretty much is the way it all works for me. I think we need to continue to be a more trusting, gentle society, And just like in an interpersonal relationship with your wife, anytime you have a conflict, there's a thing where you can go, screw you, you're wrong, and not do any self-examination, and you've jeopardized whether she was wrong. You've
Right.
jeopardized the nature of that thing. Well, humanity's the same way. We got to look at ourselves and figure out, we can all be better. We can
Yeah.
all be better, and this is a great opportunity to be better.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean only the conservative people need to be better. Everybody's got to be better. We all have to be a better version. And that's kind of my kind of internal prayer with myself, with my community around me where I live, with
Right.
obviously doing what I do where I tour all the time. I feel like my community is kind of kind of big because I mean, look,
Yeah.
we're talking. And yeah, I just hope we come out of this. Your grandma's right, and we will be fine. We'll be all right. But I
Yeah.
just hope that,
It's so interesting. I think you're spot on too, because this instant judgment, doesn't it seem that way to you? Like where people just have to instantly weigh in and judge, as opposed to like setting back a little bit, letting it breathe a little bit, maybe taking some time before just, I interviewed a guy a few times ago, and he's in Nashville now. He's a really good keyboard player, and he did his first show back, and
yeah,
he was kind of freaked out by it. And he put a picture up of the fans, which later we found out that the club didn't do it right, and they let way too many people in and stuff. And all he said was, I had, some concerns and stuff. And the amount of instant judgment and bile that came at him, it was just, and I was like, maybe take a
yeah,
breath, man. Like he's trying to make a living. He
yeah.
didn't, it's not his club. He didn't let all those people in.
I felt really judged at the very start. I mean, it was interesting because I was down in Texas and, and here in Seattle, where we live in the kind of Seattle area. And I am really proud of this community because ultimately I think that the best way of looking at the world is looking at the world as we are interrelated. And this is a great opportunity to work on that because whatever any of us do will affect the rest of us. But I was down in Texas and I was trying to find a way to play these shows.
Right.
And I was getting a lot of judgment. And I was kind of going, look, it's not so black and white. It's a lot easier to say no when you can afford to say no. And I'm
Isn't
not
that the truth?
and
Yeah.
my thing was I mean, I've lost a lot of money that I'm looking at realistically probably not being able to tour until probably March.
Right.
Probably. It's possible I'll be able to do my Christmas tour, but I'm trying to kind of prepare for that not to happen, and so I was thinking about all that, but what I was really thinking about was my players, the fact that those guys are living like these are very talented players that are living hand to mouth because they chose to be musicians. And so that few $100s that they make for these shows that we're going to do are the difference between being able to pay their bills or not being able to pay their bills. And so it was interesting for me to, even though my natural inclination is to be more conservative in this particular situation and try to go, okay, what can we do? What's the best course?
Right.
The judgment about it was really concerning to me. And it's interesting. Like my attitude about it is that I tend to be not cavalier is not the right word. I am so driven. So if I'm on tour and you're waiting to see me in Kansas City and there's a blizzard, I'm probably going to try to make it. I
Yeah.
probably will. And there have been times where I put my guys in areas where retrospectively it was irresponsible. And it's not